Welcome to Conservative Corner. My name is Tom Mountain, and we are a monthly program devoted towards issues that one may not normally hear with the mainstream media, and certainly in our general liberal community in and around the Boston area, and specifically in Newton, from whence we're recording. Every month we have a specific topic that we deal with that you wouldn't hear any other place, and we bring in guests to elucidate on that topic. One of the issues which has been near and dear to me and to many in the community has been that those issues dealing with anti-Semitism and the response, or shall we say lack of response to it, by the organized Jewish community and by at times the community in general. I wear a different hat in addition to my role on the Republican State Committee, of which I am a member. And that is, I'm the founder and vice chair of the Republican Jewish Committee of Massachusetts. And that is certainly a, shall we say, a role which is needed and is essential to dealing with issues that, shall we say, are not dealt with by the mainstream or the liberal Jewish establishment. To that end, we have with us a very important guest tonight, and that guest is attorney Karen Hurwitz, and she is a lead attorney for the organization called Education Without Indoctrination, which has been dealing with, shall we say, anti-Semitic bias in the Newton schools, anti-Israel bias, and she and the organization have been very effective in dealing with that. And also, she is an attorney who deals specifically with anti-Semitic issues across the state. And we're very glad to have her here with us tonight, because there is a lot going on, again, that you will not hear from the mainstream media, and that you certainly won't hear within the confines of Newton, which is why we're going to talk about it. So, Attorney Hurwitz, thank you very much for being here. We do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
And your organization, for which you're the lead counsel, has been very good in raising the issues of anti-Israel bias in the Newton schools. And I have also been dealing with that for many years, just the shall we say, the bias in the Newton schools, but in the public schools in general. But one thing in particular that you've been focused on has been the curriculum in the schools, and really the leftward tilt that the curriculum has taken. And when the curriculum tends to take a leftward tilt, invariably, that obviously means that it's going to be against Israel in some way, shape, or form. Just as we see with the current administration, which is very left-wing. The two go hand in hand. You have left-wing educators and you have left-wing studies, and which means anti-Israel studies. So could you please tell us about what you found, what you've discovered there, and what you've been dealing with pertaining to that in the curricula of the Newton schools and in general, and the public schools in general.
Okay. Well, this started before I was involved. This started approximately in 2011, when a student at Newton South High School came home from school and asked her father whether or not what she was learning about Israel was true. And she said that they were learning that Israelis torture Palestinian women and kill them. And her father said, I don't think that's true. And he went to the school. They said they would continue to teach it. It became an issue. A group of parents organized to try to get anti-Israel curriculum out of the schools. At that point, they were using a very anti-Israel textbook called the Arab World Studies Notebook that was ultimately eliminated from the curriculum. But the anti-Israel curriculum remained. For about 7 years, parents would organize and make presentations to the Newton School Committee and ask them to remove the curriculum. There was, the committee would not respond to the comments that were being made to them in public. They would sit stone-faced and would not would not offer any response. I was asked to get involved. I made a presentation to the school committee, a legal presentation, and there was no response either. They didn't even acknowledge, other than your time is up, they didn't acknowledge me at all. Finally, since there had been no response for about 7 years, I brought a lawsuit on behalf of 10 taxpayers in Newton, Massachusetts, in order to ask them to conform to Massachusetts regulations, which required that teachers review curriculum for any demeaning, stereotypical characterizations of nationalities or religions. And if they found it, they should balance out the curriculum and put it in context, put those materials in context, show both sides, basically. When I brought the lawsuit, the teachers defended on the basis of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education guidelines, which had been changed in 2018. They said the guidelines now require that we teach this material. And I went and looked at the guidelines, and they had indeed been changed. There had been additions to the guidelines, and especially in the Middle Eastern unit that they were required to teach in social studies and history. Originally, when DESE required to teach about Israel, it required that
When what required
when
to?
DESE, the Department of Elementary
Okay.
and Secondary Education, issued standards, they required that the UN vote in 1947 be taught to partition the Palestinian mandate into 2 independent countries. Now, or as of 2018, they added the words that they have to teach about. Now, teachers must teach about Palestinian loss of land and the creation of refugees by Israeli military action. Now, this is a hotly contested issue. There was no Palestinian loss of land because there were no Palestinians. There were Arabs and Jews. Palestinians were an entity that were created in the 60s. So first of all, it's ahistorical in that regard, but it's also ahistorical in that there was no Israeli military action which forced the evacuation of Palestinians from their homes. Israel did not have really an army at that time. And it was pursuant to this addition to the requirements that the film Ismail was shown in the Newton Public Schools on Middle East Day in May of 2018. That movie, its opening scene, depicts...
I've seen it, yes.
It depicts Palestinians being evicted from their homes and forced out of the country with only the belongings they can carry on their back, while Israeli soldiers in full uniform are acting like Nazi soldiers, hitting the Palestinians with the butts of their rifles, mocking them, and
which of course alludes to the Nazi treatment of the Jews, which was during World War II.
So the interesting thing about this is that in order to combat this kind of thing from happening, all that has to be done is that the IHRA, which is the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, definition of anti-Semitism be legislated. It's already been accepted by about 450 organizations, including the United States Department of Education, including the United States Department of Defense, about 11 countries, or more countries, about 11 states. Now, that would prohibit comparison of Israelis to Nazis as one of the things that it would do to remedy this educational
And
problem.
how would this,
And
how
wait,
would this
let me-
be, yes, please.
And Representative Stephen Howard introduced a bill
Yeah.
last year in 2021 to legislate that IHRA definition of anti-Semitism be adopted by Massachusetts, which would remedy the situation. Unfortunately, the Jewish organizations did not get behind it. ADL, Anti-Defamation League, refused to endorse it. JCRC, Jewish Community Relations Council, also refused to endorse it, whereas Jewish Voice for Peace and a few other organizations lobbied organization against it. People withdrew their support from this amendment, and it didn't pass. So that represents a colossal failure of the leadership of the Jewish organizations in this state. Moreover, in addition to that, the Jews in Massachusetts are now faced with the introduction of an ethnic studies bill, similar to the bill that was passed in California. This bill would also be very perilous for Jewish students and for Jews, because it would mandate a curriculum that teaches that there is systemic racism and colonialism in the United States, and that you have to be anti-racist in order to fight it. So there's the preamble to the bill, which I brought with me, and I'd like to quote from it because it's very it's inflammatory in and of itself. The preamble to the bill states that, whereas the events of 2/20, including the murder of George Floyd, have elucidated the emergent nature of the social, economic, and health disparities caused by racial inequity, including the profiling and murders of black and brown people and anti-Asian violence. And then it goes on to say that there's, and white supremacy and white-centric history has fostered lies in systemic inequity and outright violence. It's in the best interest of the students of the Commonwealth to be educated in ethnic studies. Now you notice in the preamble to this bill, there isn't any mention of anti-Jewish violence. And the FBI in 2020 noted that 57% of the hate crimes nationwide have been perpetrated against Jews. So why isn't there any mention of this in the preamble? And on the other hand, there is mention of colonialism and violence, and this is very dangerous to the Jews because in the ethnic studies curriculum that was passed in California, they had the same thing. They had a lot of anti-racist curriculum, and it was anti-Semitic in that it equated the Jews with white oppressors. And the people who were advocating that curriculum, such as Teach Palestine, you can go on their website, they are conflating, they're using this as a wedge to defame Israel and to delegitimize Israel. What they want to do is equate Israel with a colonialist settler empire, and they want to dismantle that racism and dismantle Israel. And as part of the social justice movement in social justice advocacy that's in the bill, they cited the example of boycott, BDS, boycott, divest, and sanction Israel, because Israel is supposedly under that a racist colonial empire. So what's happening is, under the guise of inclusivity and trying to appreciate different cultures in the United States, they are introducing an anti-Israel curriculum. So it will be worse than it already is in Massachusetts if this kind of ethnic studies is adopted. Now, I have written to the leaders here, the ADL, JCRC, and they haven't responded to me about the anti-Israel curriculum. And I found out that the JCRC has submitted testimony on the new ethnic studies bill, and they are okay with ethnic studies being taught in general as a inclusive ideology, but they did not mention anything in their testimony about how this would be bad for the Jews. And I don't even believe that the Jews in Massachusetts are aware that this is a pending issue. And for the JCRC not to educate the Jews in Massachusetts about this and not to be their voice is really neglecting their duties.
You know, one has to wonder, what is the purpose of the Jewish Community Relations Council and the Anti-Defamation League in particular, if not to alert people to the problems of anti-Semitism, whether it be physical anti-Semitism or anti-Semitism as highlighted in curriculum, which is presented to students in the school system. Now,
to alert them and protect them.
Now, also, and it's a very sad implication on the so-called Jewish establishment, the Combined Jewish Philanthropies, which is the umbrella group for all the Jewish organizations in the state. It's a very sad implication and indictment of them, quite frankly. I think that what we've seen also is there is a very unfortunate trend in public education today, maybe in education in general, where we've seen the teachers become much more radicalized in their politics and in their approach to teaching. In other words, they're not simply content with teaching the basics of history. They want to add their own very left-wing bias towards that approach to history. And in doing so, they want to be, they're pretty much social justice warriors, and they get paid a great deal for doing that. Now,
well, this is the ethnic studies bill, and if you look at the groups that promoted this in California, they have a model curriculum that was rejected by the legislature in California. However, they're pushing it because, just as in Massachusetts, the school districts in California are autonomous bodies, and they can choose whatever curriculum they want to satisfy the ethnic studies requirement. So many of them are now choosing the first and very radical ethnic studies proposal. Very dangerously for Massachusetts, the people who authored that curriculum now have pilot projects in 5 schools in Massachusetts, and that's being taught in Massachusetts.
Which school districts? Do you know offhand?
I can't find out.
Okay.
But what's very dangerous about that is that the curriculum that has proven so perilous for the students in California is being drafted by the same people in Massachusetts.
From Massachusetts. This is a problem.
Yes, that's a problem. And the bigger problem is the Jewish community has not been alerted to this, although there have been newspaper articles about it. The Jewish leadership has not alerted their Jewish constituency to it. Because what needs to happen is that they're alerted to it, they're educated to it, and a discussion needs to be had between the leadership and the community about what should be done.
The ethnic studies bill, where is that in the state legislature of Massachusetts right now?
I don't know where it is right now.
Okay, so this bill, if it's passed, and it probably will be because the state legislature is very liberal, and if it's passed, then it goes to the governor, and the governor will probably veto it. We'll try to make him veto it, and Then when he vetoes it, then it will go back to the state legislature. Now, more often than not, they can override the governor's veto because they have the votes to do it. Now, so the idea is to, what's critical is to stop it in its tracks as
Yes.
best as possible. You know, for the longest time, for well over 100 years, we had the Jewish Advocate, which was the premier Jewish newspaper in New England. That, and I was a columnist for that for 5 years. Had that newspaper still been in circulation, I'd be writing about this, and I'm sure you would be writing about this as well. That was the newspaper which, although it was very liberal, they still at least gave me a corner, so to speak, to elucidate on issues like you mentioned. So there's a problem of getting the people informed of what's going on.
And I think that's the responsibility of the Jewish leadership
It
here.
is.
Because, you know, the JCRC has a mailing list.
That's right.
CJP has a mailing list. ADL has a mailing list. I get their emails, but they're not doing any seminars on ethnic studies. They're not doing any group discussions about it. They're not having any webinars about it, and they should be. And interestingly, when I was mentioning the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, even though that amendment was defeated in the legislature here, Governor Baker last week signed a proclamation in which he adopted it. I don't believe it has the effect of law. It's not as if Massachusetts has adopted it, but he is very concerned about the widespread anti-Semitism going on, and I think he does understand
and
that
I will
the
say this,
IHRA definition
yes,
would put an end to it.
He will be a very good ally in this, and in this capacity, he's not to be underestimated because his heart and his politics are in the right place pertaining to this. The question is, as you alerted the viewers, is what to do about groups like the JCRC and ADL who refuse to even approach this subject. Now, I think that the basic premise is these are very liberal organizations and they want to stay in the liberal fold. So when liberal groups try to present the ethnic studies things like you described, and they whitewash it without mentioning anything pertaining to what they're going to do vis-a-vis Israel, it's their natural inclination is to try to solidify themselves with the liberal organizations that are pushing this in the state legislature without doing the responsible thing and alerting people to the shall we say, the fine print, which pertains to Israel and anti-Semitism. And that's their job. They need to do that, to look at the fine print, to look at what's lurking behind the scenes. And they're not doing it. And that's the problem. That's why, and it's very critical what you're doing. And there are others who certainly will follow the lead. I'm sure Americans for Peace and Tolerance under Charles Jacobs and the Zionist Organization of America, and a few groups will. And like I said, for now, you have the Republican governor who's very much concerned with this, and he's been very receptive to things which we have posted to him and asked him to do vis-a-vis the Republican Jewish Committee. This is a problem. This is an issue. And the problem, I think, the main problem with the ethnic studies bill is that you and I, you mostly, have been fighting the anti-Israel bias in the curriculum for a very long time. And should this ethnic studies bill be passed, then you have the situation, well, the left-wing educators can say, well, it was passed by the state legislature and the Board of Education, et cetera, et cetera. So in other words, it emboldens them, it gives them validity. And
it not only emboldens them, it authorizes them.
It authorizes
to
them.
teach what's basically critical race theory.
And
now,
apply
ethnic
it.
studies is not exactly critical race theory, but it incorporates critical race theory.
And from that, they will extrapolate their anti-Israel curriculum to mirror that. And they can elaborate on that thing.
It's already being done in
California. It's already being done. And they're trying to do it in Massachusetts. And the problem is, Massachusetts is really fertile ground for this. This couldn't really happen in South Dakota or Montana, but it can in Massachusetts because we're really technically the most liberal state by all statistics. And so this is fertile ground for that. And the question is, how do we prevent it from being enacted? And I'll present that to you.
Well, I think we have to gather momentum against it by educating people about what it really is. And I don't believe that only the Jews would oppose this, because I believe if people were educated about it, they would see that instead of being an inclusive history of what different cultures have contributed to the United States, it really glorifies some of them at the expense of others. For instance, there is nothing in the ethnic studies bill that would detail the history of the Jews in the United States who were here since 1654, or the many contributions that the Jews have made, the many impediments that were put in their way, the restricted clubs, the not being able to buy real estate. I mean, this is going on when I was growing up. I remember the movie A Gentleman's Agreement about Darien, Connecticut, where Jewish people were not allowed to buy property there by a gentleman's agreement among the realtors and the landowners. This is not. There has been so much anti-Semitism that people here in the United States that people just forget about.
And now the problem is now the anti-Semitism really has morphed into anti-Israel, and being anti-Israel and anti-Semitic.
What's the new anti-Semitism?
It's a new anti-Semitism.
Is anti-Israel, and what's happening is they're making the Jews in the United States responsible somehow for Israel's political actions, and this ethnic studies bill, because it teaches that Israel is a settler.
It's a neo-colonialist, yeah. So it's certainly a false premise and a false historical analogy. That's totally fallacious.
Well, not only is it totally fallacious, it gives it emotionally, settlers are bad. Colonialism is bad.
Yes.
It targets Jewish students.
It does, and this is and I know that you've dealt with that, and we'd like to have you come back at some point soon to get an update on this, and I mean that, perhaps within a few months. It's now the winter, and perhaps in the springtime, because this is a very important subject, and we're going to be following up on this. Unfortunately, we are out of time. It was a pleasure to have you here. We're very glad that you did come here. And again, folks, thank you for tuning in. Please check your local listings for a Conservative Corner. It will be run repeatedly over the next month in and around Newton. And please, we welcome you back when we have our next show, which will be at the end of March. And we're glad that you tuned in. And we thank New TV for hosting us, for allowing us to do this, and for presenting really a conservative view that you wouldn't hear anywhere else, certainly not in this area. So thank you again.
Thank you, Tom.